A while back, I made me an enormous hog splitter. I wanted one to hang up in my kitchen. I just wanted one. Somebody offered me some money for it and I sold it to them. I hope they really enjoy it. But I said I was going to make me another one. I must be a glutton for punishment. So I have this piece of diesel truck spring, brand new. It's never been on a truck. This thing's every bit of a ½ inch thick, 3 inches wide. I also have some 1/4 inch plate steel. I've cleaned one side up. I'm gonna do another San My hog splitter 2.0. Alright, I got my billet welded up. It's a beast. We're gonna get it in the forge. Well, I'm glad I went ahead and made this today, or started it today. It's June, mid-June here in Missouri, and normally it's freaking hot. So when I got up this morning, it was like 84 degrees and muggy. But I thought it might rain today. The news said it might. You never know here. But it is actually raining. It's cloudy. It's about 80 degrees. There's a breeze blowing. We got a giant billet in the forge. It's getting close. Let's keep going. Enjoy the day. Alright, so right there at the end of that, poof, I seen a weld pop. So I cut it out. I lost probably 1/3 of one side of my mild steel for my San My. I'm sticking it back in the forge. We're going to do another squeeze on it. I may change it up a little, but I'm already hot, so I'm not stopping. Let's see what happens. Alright guys, that's it for today. It's hot. But I don't know, I got a 12 or 14 inch piece drawn out there, probably 4.5 inches wide so far. We'll just see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it in the forge, let it cool down slow, soften up the steel, clean up the edges where my welds were, and we'll probably do another forge session or two. Alright, we're back on the hog splitter. I've done some cutting on it. So when I was forge welding, I saw a line in there and I lied to myself and ignored it. I said, well, it's just some forge scale that cracked when I pressed it. On my next heat, I actually saw the weld pop. So I immediately cut that piece off and I continued forge welding on. And I knew right then that the big hog splitter was not going to happen. And I thought, well, I will just continue on and see how big of a cleaver I can make. So I went ahead and forged it out some. I got more forging to do, but I decided to cut it up and have a look at it. So let me show you where we're at. Okay, so when I had my initial forge weld failure, it was this side of the mild steel, and I cut that and I removed it and took it off. So I went ahead and forged out 12 inches, sort of flat, still pretty thick, I can get more, but I wanted to have a look at it, so I cut the tail off so I could see this weld. When I picked it up and looked, I told myself, well, that's not welded at all. So I took and cut this slice off of the handle piece here, and I took a chisel and popped it. And when I did, you can see this one little piece right here, that's all that had forge weld. So we may have a complete failure. I may not have gotten the mild steel hot enough to weld. So I looked at this end. Here's my mild steel that's on it, and where I cut it off is now back up in here, okay? But you can see there's my mild steel. When I cut it off, I didn't think it was welded. I took a chisel and actually tried to split it, and I couldn't split it open. I took this piece I cut off and I really worked it over, but I couldn't make it move, so I think that it's forge welded. Here's the end of the piece where I cut it off. I could see it right there, and I wanted to make sure it had stuck, but it appears to be forge welded. So we're going to go ahead and stick it back in the forge and squeeze on this and watch it before we do anything else. Well, when you're a person like me and you doubt something, you will go through whatever you have to go through to figure it out. So the once upon a time hog splitter. So I showed you in this last little, just a minute ago, this piece here I didn't trust, and I told you I put a chisel on it and I worked it over pretty good, but I couldn't make it open up anymore. But it just kept bothering me and bothering me all night last night. So I come out here this morning, I get the shop opened up, I fire up the forge, and I start looking at it. And I saw a piece of the cladding that, you know, I ground on it. Let's see here. So I ground on it, and I ground it down. Let's see if I can get where you can see this line. Okay. Can you see that line right there? So I ground a 1/4 inch into that just to see if that line was going to disappear, and it didn't disappear. So I keep looking, and then I find up here by the handle a seam, looks like that right there, little line. I put a chisel in it and I start peeling it up. So I don't even want to see how far it goes now. I want to see what happened. So I sawed it in half, and I went ahead and polished this side so we can look at it better. So let me set the phone up and let's go look at it. Alright, so I got it clamped in a vise, and I'm trying to figure out how to best show you this. So I've got my cladding. You can see my cladding right here. Okay, and then you can see my core right here. Okay, so my cladding comes on, and you can see, I don't know, it comes in there, it's probably that far. That's probably a 1/4 of an inch, which is about how far I peeled that one piece up before it's welded. Same on this side, you can see it right there. So I sawed it in half because I was thinking that I didn't get it hot enough to forge weld the mild steel. So you have to get it hotter to forge weld mild steel than you do high carbon steel. I was pretty sure, and I think I did. Another thing that I did different was when I made this billet, I was going to weld the sides solid, and I thought, it's not that big of a deal. And I sprayed some WD-40 in it instead of putting it in my kerosene. Not really sure that had anything to do with it. I think what happened was on my very first weld, I think it was just too large of a billet to try to press the whole thing at once. I think I should have heated it, pressed half of it, put it back in the forge, heated it, pressed the other half. And I should have done all 3 welds like that. Hey, it's a learning experience every time. So I turn it around, you can look at the other side, and it's about the same thing. You can see my cladding right here. You can see that about 1/4 of an inch in before it's welded good. It is not welded. It's got an inclusion. My guess is 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I just can't leave well enough alone. So I went back and I watched the beginning videos. I saw the whole problem. So the problem that I ended up with right here, where I peeled this back this 1/4 inch, was this diesel leaf spring that I had a rounded edge. And my mild steel, the 1/4 inch plate mild steel I cut, had a square edge, so that diesel leaf spring was sticking up just a tiny bit. And when I welded it just in like 3 or 4 spots across there, what happened was there was an airspace there. If I can make my hands. There was an airspace there, right on the edge. In the time it took me to come out of the forge and go to the press, that little airspace started building slag on it. It started oxidizing, I know, in seconds. That is where the whole initial problem come from. So I figured out what my problem was. I should have ground my billet to be flat, or I should have welded the entire perimeter. And I'm going with B. I should have welded the entire perimeter. That way, even if there was a little bit of a gap there between the two, right on the edges, I would have just filled that with weld and shut that airspace off where it couldn't have oxidized. So everyone's a learning experience. Call it a fail, call it whatever you want. I can still cut a 1/4 inch off of this billet all the way around and saw it in 4 pieces and probably pour 3 or 4 knives this size out of it. Yeah. So I know what the problem is, and now all I got to do is just find the next project.